In 2291, in an attempt to control violence among deep space miners, the New Earth government legalized no-holds-barred fighting.
Holy crap, they put Unreal Tournament on TV. I love Unreal Tournament. The Unreal games are my absolute favorites. All three of them. If you're unfamiliar with Unreal Tournament and the larger series outside of it, don't worry, Epic prefers it that way. After publicly disowning the franchise a couple years ago, halting development on the latest game which started its life as a fan-run project, pulling the games from every digital storefront, and quietly cancelling their plans to give the oft-maligned UT3 a free-to-play revival, it kinda felt like that was that. No more Unreal Tournament, no true follow-up to Unreal, and no chance to ever revisit this weird and wide universe Epic had introduced people to back in the late 90s. So then the secret level thing gets announced, and Unreal Tournament is one of the games tagged for it. What? Okay. How? I don't care. It was rad. And it was so clearly made by someone who cares about the series. There's no way this was a cheap cash grab, because what cash? UT was instagibbed in broad daylight. The game this most closely resembles was closed down something like 7 years ago. This was a passion project, and it shows. So what I'm going to do right now is go through this thing as meticulously as I can and point to all the fun little things they included from the game, related to the game, vaguely similar to the game, all that good stuff. It's not, however, meant to be a focus on the narrative itself, though that's hard to avoid and I'll probably talk about it a bit anyway. One more thing, since this is an episode about Unreal Tournament, I'm only going to be pulling from those games, not the console-only Championship series. I hear the second game's liked well enough, but I never played them. Alright, let's rock. First off, we open in the year 2282 as some techs start their shift. They have a team of robots, Alpha Team we hear.
Deploying Mech Team Alpha.
And this green one isn't booting up as fast as it's supposed to. One guy gets mad and starts beating the robot with a hammer. A bit of aggression with these deep space miners, maybe someone should legalize no-holds-barred fighting about it. The robot boots up and grabs itself an impact hammer. In Unreal Tournament, UT99 from now on, this is one of the two weapons you spawned with, your last-ditch melee option. This one is based on, but not identical to, its design from the abandoned UT4 Alpha, and keeps the UT3-style EMP discharge fire mode the robot's vision shows us. In that game, it was used to heavily damage vehicles or knock power-ups out of players. We also see that it has a shield armed, which might be pointing to it able to act like UT2003 and 2004's shield gun. We get a few lines establishing that these robots are mining drones, and then we get a location card that calls this out as Asteroid LBX 7683, Leandri Mining Facility. This is very exciting. If you're unfamiliar, Leandri is a big space mining corporation. In the games, they're the ones who founded the titular tournament, known in-universe as the Leandri Grand Tournament, and they are cartoonishly evil in the best, most charming ways. They're the ones who lobbied to legalize murder sport, and the games all show little snippets of the extent of their reach, typically through map and character descriptions. We unfortunately won't see much of that here, given that it's only got 15 minutes, but I do think they managed to get the point across nicely. LBX 7683, however, is the real fun thing to see. In UT 2004, the assault-level robot factory was in-universe, and just assume that I mean in-universe when I'm talking about something like this from now on, a recreation of a violent uprising done by the robotic test subjects of a research and development lab on an artificial asteroid. One big enough to have a lot of water, apparently. So there have been some changes for the show, but the original map description does also mention the robots went on to then make use of the asteroid's mineral deposits before ultimately having the rebellion put down. Maybe it's just both of these things here, a research lab that also mines stuff. That's not too hard to believe. In fact, the level description says they were doing AI research there, so that leans into Zan becoming self-aware, like in this episode. Finally, moving on from that, we see some robots using their impact hammers. The robot, who will eventually be revealed as Zan, scans the rock underneath him to highlight some ore deposits. Now, unless I missed some very small text somewhere, this isn't explicitly called out as teridium, but it's safe to assume that it is. In the Unreal universe, teridium is a crystalline sort of thing that has weird properties. In Unreal, it's thought to be what lets the Sky Islands float. It's what the invading Skaarj were after. It's ammo for the Stinger, and the sludgy byproducts of mining it are used as ammo for the bio-rifle in all the games. It's your average sci-fi miracle element, and it would make sense that Leandri Mining Corporation would be after it. So then we move on to a robot who's managed to stand directly in the path of the big drill, and the human tech who smacked Zan around earlier just plows on ahead. Seems like these robots aren't too well respected, which gets reinforced across the short montage of other workdays spanning a few months. Two fun things here. The montage ends in 2283, which is the correct date given of the robot uprising in Robot Factory, and Zan ends the whole thing being assigned to Work Team Omega.
Deploying Mech Team Omega.
A cute little nod to one of his taunts in UT-99.
I am the Alpha and the Omega.
This montage is also useful for establishing that while these are robots, they're not the most robust. It's handy to get that out of the way before the fighting starts, so you aren't wondering why they aren't just tanking all the bullets. These aren't Terminators, they're walking scissor lifts. Now, the show does skip over the uprising and eventual quelling, so no mention of big tanks or AI cores, but that's okay. Now we fast-forwarded to Zan and the remaining bots in a holding cell awaiting trial by tournament. The bottom third of this broadcast scrolls by and calls out the Corrupts, referring to the robots. In UT-99 in 2004, this is Zan's team, though it should be the Corrupt, no S. Ah well. As 5 robots are loaded into the elevator, 5v5 is a very classic team deathmatch setup, we also get Zan looking at this pale guy who's called out as having Necrus nanotech augmentations and being property of the Fader Corporation. Yeah, the Necrus, they're weird. In UT-99, they're just kind of there because it was fun to put all sorts of characters and teams in. They're supposedly aliens, according to a developer, and their character descriptions reference blood sisters, chaplains, blade maidens, that sort of stuff. Fader is alluded to being maybe some kind of religious order or something like it. It's not the kind of game for a story. They don't really have anything going on. They're just around and in the tournament. UT 2004 brings 2 Necrus characters back, but with only that many, they don't even have a full team, and just show up as guys you can add to your own. Their descriptions don't add much new information, but do highlight a long lifespan. Apparently they were a big deal in Unreal Championship 2, which might explain why UT3 tried to focus on them as much as it did. UT3's a weird one, people didn't like it for a reason. There, the Necrus were like zombies brought back by this thing called the Nanoblack, which showed up in a few maps as some sort of consuming substance. The character descriptions lean more into the stuff from UT-99, but they look different and honestly kind of awful, just like everything in UT3. Look, it was 2007, everything had a million polys and none of them were pleasant to look at. You know what, this whole thing was probably just a big waste of time. You want an easy box to put the Necrus in? Techno-zombie murder cultists. Let's move on. We get a little part of the classic UT theme as the robots go up the elevator. It's fun, I like that.
And so we brought them here. Where you
Our citizens?
So when they get up there, we see what's probably the most controversial thing about this among the UT fans of the world. It takes place in a sports arena. Part of the cartoonish charm of the series and Leandrian side of it is that the tournament venues were real places. They'd buy up decommissioned reactors, obsolete space stations, or undersea labs. They'd bankroll archaeological expeditions to alien planets with the stipulation that any ruins discovered would be used for deathmatch. The Unreal Universe is bursting with that sort of flavor, so yeah, bringing it down to just sports arena is a little disappointing. Again, looking at it metatextually, I understand they've only got 15 minutes to sell the concept to people who don't know a shield belt from a shock rifle, but I too lament the loss of all the exotic locales we used to visit. Just like when UT3 did almost exactly the same thing. Why are we in the mountains, Epic? We're supposed to be in space. Appearing out of the other elevator then is Thunder Crash, led by Malcolm there on the left. The other members don't necessarily look much like the ones that appear in any of the other games, so I won't spend time trying to match them up. And then we get our tournament tech guy selecting the map. The screen he uses is fun. These are all the map preview screenshots that are used in the game, and while there's some overly aggressive depth of field going on, we can actually make out a good handful of them. The easy ones are Barricade, Pyramid, Overlord, and Ocean Floor. To the left on the top row is really blurry, but I think it's more salt maps, so with some image editing magic, it looks like Rook and Frigate. Bottom at the far left looks like it might be Codex, but the one next to it I just cannot figure out. It's on screen for so few frames and so blurry during that. If you solve this mystery, I salute you. When he swipes to the next screen, it gets easier to make out Lava Giant, Morpheus, and Korit, all UT99 maps. Tokara Forest and Rankin from UT 2004 make an appearance, as does Facing Worlds with its UT4 design, but actually a different preview picture than is used in-game, the only case of this. As he swipes again, we can see Deck 16, a map also named Leandri, and Phobos, once again all from UT99. The map he selects, though, is Skaarj from UT3. Another thing I should mention is that this whole sequence really closely mirrors the UT 2003 intro movie, just without the teams being teleported to the chosen map. Given that this is a prequel, I get it. The map building itself out of this modular arena is a fun touch, and a nice bit of flair if we can't have all the different locations.
3, 2, 1.
Small nitpick, this is actually the end of round countdown, not the one that starts a match.
3, 2, 1. Congratulations, you are the winner.
People start with Enforcers, those are the UT4 models.
First blood.
First Blood callout, classic. A weapon pickup. Just like when Zan got his impact hammer, this robot gets a little info card when one of the enemy team members grabs a flak cannon. Similar sorts of stats here, calling out the primary and secondary fire modes, as well as its starting and max ammo, plus how much an ammo pickup will give. Interestingly, it also seems to list damage numbers for the fire modes, and is using Unreal's numbers here, except for the max ammo, which is from UT4. Should also note, this is the model created for the previously mentioned cancelled Unreal Tournament sort of 4 project. We're going to be seeing a lot of those here, and all of them look great. And one final thing about this second long scene, check out the Trident Defense banner on the wall. They're the company who is said to have made the flat cannon, at least in UT 2004 and UT3, where they're named Trident Defensive Technologies. This one does have Leandri branding though, so maybe it's a knockoff. Back at the start, we also got a very quick glimpse of an Inuit Corporation banner who are from Unreal. They built the ISV Kran, which is a pretty important location in that game, as well as a rather large series of levels about halfway through. As the match progresses quite quickly, I do have to point out that even though this is supposedly Skaarj from UT3, it's missing all of the cover between ends of the map. I imagine this is intentional in the story given the comments made by the organizer lady, but I do just want to point out that the map in UT3 is significantly less open. We also see this flip-up cover thing activated by Pressure Plate, which is wholly made up for this show. It seems like more of a Gears of War thing, and the less that game infects Unreal Tournament, the better.
The fighter won't help evac all these colonists. Just get my sister to safety.
Still more fighting, and hey, 451, the funny video game number. Killing spree callout, which is correct if Malcolm got all 5 kills, but it's hard to verify that. As Zan watches the screen, we see that Malcolm's team is in fact Thunder Crash, just like the game. Another banner in full view, this time for ASMD, related to the shock rifle, formerly the ASMD shock rifle, and formerly just the ASMD. Is Secret Level making a choice to present the idea that a company named ASMD makes it, or did they just put it there as another thing that's relevant to the world? Or maybe someone in this world just paid for an ad spot to tell everyone the message ASMD has, at least behind the scenes, always stood for. Next match, and hey, they're playing on Morpheus. Well, sort of. It clearly is Morpheus, but this is where the change to an indoor arena starts to matter. In UT99, those platforms were actually the tops of 3 skyscrapers that reached into low Earth orbit, and the outdoor areas had reduced gravity. The lack of that here means these bridges got added. Otherwise, the layout's pretty identical. No clue if the lower section in the middle is in place, though. And here we get our first look at the Skaarj, an alien race that once almost wiped out all of humanity over the course of the 7-day siege after tracking a ship back to Earth in response to Prisoner 849 killing a queen and blowing up the mothership on Napali in Unreal. Now they play sports with us. God, I love this series. Do not love their design here, unfortunately. It's pulling from the UT4 alpha, and they're just a little weird looking, gonna be honest. UT 2004 treated them way better. That said, in UT99, they were technically Skaarj human hybrids, but the video screen a few seconds from now does call them Skaarj. Or, excuse me, Skaarj. Someone on the staff here really liked improperly pluralizing things. So the match begins, and we get 2 weapons showing up, starting with the rocket launcher. Once again, this is its UT4 model, and it looks great. This one Skaarj loads a rocket, then after the shot cuts, another one seems to load as well. A mainstay of the Unreal series is that the rocket launcher can fire multiple shots at once after a loading period, and it does seem that at least 2 rockets fire here. In Unreal and UT99 it could fire up to 6, but later games would cut that in half, solidifying that tri-barrel design you see here. Zan grabs a Ripper that we'll talk about shortly, and at the screen I mentioned earlier we see 2 new banners, one for Liandry, who we all know by now, and Axon, who are one of their main competitors. An interesting point here is that the Liandry logo on these banners is the one created for UT4, while the logo on all the robots' shoulders is the one used in UT 2004. Now we've got to look at the Ripper's stats. The Ripper is a nice but unexpected pick here. It was present in Unreal as the Razorjack, a weird alien gun where you could sort of guide the blade with the secondary fire, and in UT99 as it is here. This model seems to be new for the show since it never reappeared in any game past those 2. Looks good, it's pretty clearly pulling a lot from the classic design but still manages to match the visual language of the existing UT4 models. As the stats say, it's a gun that launches circular razor blades with an explosive secondary fire. Weird thing here though is that they don't list the damage like they did for the flak cannon. I don't really care, but it's odd that they did it the once.
Retribution.
The Retribution callout here isn't from any of the games unless I'm just absolutely missing something, but I don't hate its inclusion. Now we've got the stats for the minigun, and another weird deviation from how they've been presented before. Instead of listing the primary and secondary fire modes, this just says hit scan. So no clue if this is based on the Unreal or UT99 versions with full auto and fuller auto, or the UT 2004 version with full auto and its slower explosive secondary fire. But it definitely isn't Unreal's UT3's or UT4's Stinger, which shot projectiles, though the latter 2 games did have hit scan primary fires. Confusing, I know. And just to complicate things even further, UT4 actually does have a minigun, except it uses the exact same model and fire modes as the Stinger, just with a much faster rate of fire. And is it just me, or is 75 max ammo really bad for a minigun? UT99 had the lowest max ammo at 199, and other games would push that up to 300. This is a weird batch of stats, is what I'm saying. This also isn't the UT4 model, but seems to be entirely new, opting for a 6-barrel design like the UT 2004 version instead of the triple 3 thing that UT3 and 4 used. Although, that said, the UT4 version was just kind of a slightly modified and retextured version of the UT3 Stinger, so I don't even know if that counts as a new model. The point is, this model's new for the show, and I quite like it. This might also be a sneaky reference to the opening splash screen of UT 2004 where a Skaarj kicks through the Nvidia logo. I might also just really be reaching. Now we get some more in-your-face flat cannon action, and it seems to have a really fast fire rate. The Ripper blade bouncing around and Zan almost getting hit with his own shot is a fun touch, since that thing did not discriminate in UT99. In contrast, the flat cannon doesn't seem to have its shots be bouncing as much as they should be, if at all. Though we do get the classic smiley face on the shell, I'm glad they kept that in. And after all that, I do have to point out that there is not actually a flat cannon on this map in any of the games. There is, however, one in the Morpheus-inspired map, Plunge, from UT 2003 and 2004. The interior in this sequence is a lot bigger than it was in the map, but seems to keep the same general shape from what we can see of it. They just added room for a couple more pillars. After this robot gets used as a shield, we get the very classic headshot. I actually would have been upset if they got through this whole thing without it. And that's actually true to UT99, where the only weapon that could get headshots other than the sniper rifle was, in fact, the Ripper. The Skaarj here picks up something that isn't actually labeled as anything, but is playing the part of the Redeemer, the man-portable nuclear missile launcher. Its design seems to be a vague mix of UT99 and UT3, keeping the angled tube on the top, but turning it into something held on the shoulder, though without the latter game's accompanying console thing. Otherwise, entirely new model for the episode, given that it hadn't yet gotten one in UT4. The sequence that happens here is a staple of the series, though done a bit differently. While UT as a series has had jump pads since the beginning, this jump via flip-up wall evokes the lift jump a little more. That's when you get on an elevator and jump at the very top, where your momentum from being moved upwards combines with the jump to fling yourself through the air. Very fun, I'm glad it got some screen time. After a short conversation, we get a bit of a montage and some familiar faces. This guy seems to be a combination of Remus and Romulus from the Iron Guard team in UT 2004, going by the grey face mask and sunglasses. No telling what map they're playing on, though. These quick cuts here are harder to figure out anything about, mainly because their designs have changed so radically from their original appearance that they aren't likely to be anyone in particular unless they really want you to know. The TV in the next scene does call the team out as Iron Guard, so we can maybe assume it's any of these people, but not as explicitly as Romulus from before. Another very quick and very close shot of the map selection screen showing that the next one up is Deck 16, a certified classic. If this is Deck 16, it's very difficult to say what part of it, if it's even trying to resemble the map at all. Maybe it's near the rocket launcher hallway, but then you should be able to see the bridges behind Zan here. He does have a rocket launcher in the next shot, so maybe? 3 more characters, and again, if they're anyone, the designs have been changed so much that it's tough trying to place them.
Multi-kill.
The multi-kill callout as the scene changes is fun though, that's what you get for 3 kills in a short amount of time. Another montage about killing some Skaarj, no clue as to the map. Now, in this scene here, on one monitor, we can see some plans for facing worlds, also footage from this exact episode that's handy. Necrosky calls Zan the Alpha. Once again, little nod to his taunt in the original UT.
And Zan is the Alpha.
And the Omega.
This is where I could actually bring up how UT99 and 2004 had a bit of a divide in the background info of the world between them, with UT99 suggesting that Zan Krigor, to use his full name, was the alter ego of Liandry's own CEO, competing in the tournament in a suit of power armor. Fans often point to the fact that if you jib Zan in the final match, he turns into chunks of meat and blood rather than robotic parts. In UT 2004, however, he's actually just a robot. There's more to it though, differences and additional info between the PC and PS2 versions of UT99, references to Zan in character and map descriptions, and a Mark II model included in UT99's bonus pack that claims he was rebuilt. But that model comes from the Dreamcast version where it just was supposed to be normal Zan. The important thing is, in this particular short film, Zan is this robot. That's where we gotta leave it. And so here we are at the final match, facing Worlds itself. Unreal Tournament's most famous map, and one of the most famous among all video games. A simple and elegant layout, and it's seen some changes that I'll talk about as they come up. Like these platforms that jut into the empty space between the side paths. They're new, and the spawn point, if that's what we're calling it, has been moved to them instead of just being behind the respective team's tower. Before we get too much further, I should of course mention that this is typically a capture the flag map, but is being used here for deathmatch. This Elite Guard team isn't necessarily from any of the games, at least not as a visual reference. We see another new company on the banners here, Riordan. Riordan? Riordan. Use whichever one you think is right. They make the Link gun, which replaced the Pulse gun from UT99. The one here is once again using the UT4 Alpha model. It's not exactly where the weapons spawn in the map, usually it's on one side of each tower's rear face depending on the game, and in UT99 this map had the Ripper in its place. And I'll point out the Izanagi banner, who are Liandry's main competitor. The two of them got up to some real shenanigans during the Corporation Wars. One change we see going up the middle here is that the paths that give the map its typical figure 8 layout have been straightened out. There's also no big Kego health pickup in the middle, but then there haven't been health pickups in any of this so far. Ah, a sniper in the mid-level of the tower. Wouldn't be Face without it. Although we can see as the countersnipe comes in that this is actually a new platform added to the side of the tower, bringing the general layout of the structures almost more in line with Facing Worlds 3 from UT 2003 and 2004. I wonder if anyone out there is working on making this version of the map for any of the games.
Captain, we don't have time for camping.
Oh, cute. If you know Face. Well, yeah. A better look at the towers here, and they're actually much larger than in the original. The extra space at the top and those additional platforms on the side at different tiers reinforces the more Phase 3-like construction, while it also seems that there isn't much or any space next to the towers themselves. The elevator here replaces a teleporter in the game's version of things. Alright, big break from the game here. UT, in any of its incarnations, does not have throwable grenades. UT 2004 introduced a sticky grenade launcher, though that was mostly seen as part of an expanded arsenal on maps with vehicles. There was a grenade in Chaos UT, which was a mod that got official recognition in the Game of the Year edition of UT 99, but those... No, not quite the same thing. Some link or pulse gun scenes, and nobody's using the secondary fire for any of the guns throughout this whole thing, really. I guess I'm mildly disappointed by that. Just like Retribution earlier, this assist callout doesn't exist in the games, though the UT4 Alpha did count them. The Rampage callout here isn't entirely appropriate. That's for getting 10 kills without dying, and there weren't quite that many robots, even if this one guy did kill all of them. This chamber Zan enters is hard to pin down. If he was taking an elevator that replaced the central teleporter, he should be on top of the tower, but this still seems enclosed and again far more spacious.
Congratulations, you are the winner.
Excellent use of the victory callout.
Witness.
Rebellion. Rebellion. Rebel.
And one final little snippet of the UT main theme. We're done! In the canon of the games, for however much that matters, Zan is the champion you face in UT 99, though he isn't the first champion. He was absent in UT 2003, was a potential final opponent in UT 2004 based on how that game's single-player ladder worked, and wasn't involved in UT3 at all, though there was a team of Leandri robots that shared many names with the classic corrupt roster, but who do not resemble them at all. Thanks, UT3. Secret Level Unreal Tournament is a fantastic little thing. Was it perfect? Was it a one-to-one representation of the weird world of the Unreal series? Was it able to showcase all of the things like hammer jumping or shock combos or the U-damage pickup? Was it just a 15-minute long sequence of contextless violence set to late 90s techno? No, it wasn't. But it was a beautifully animated, incredibly well-paced look at something all the fans thought was doomed to be forgotten. This was a project made by someone who wanted to make it, and I think they did a great job. It really feels like they got it, this strange desire to explore a universe that ultimately shouldn't matter, seen through map descriptions and character bios, a few sentences at a time. The Unreal Tournament series managed to create something big in the background, something it never needed but felt very correct to have. And this episode was an excellent understanding of that. If you're new to the series and want to play it, good and bad news. Epic doesn't want to let you, and won't sell you the games, but they don't exactly have to these days. Old Unreal, a team dedicated to supporting Unreal and Unreal Tournament on modern systems since the mid-2000s and who have been on good terms with Epic for just about as long, received official blessing to create and host an installer package on the Internet Archive. Each one will get you a full copy of either game and automatically patch it to their most recent version. New renderers, bug fixes, quality of life updates, all that good stuff. Unreal Tournament 2004, objectively the finest FPS ever crafted by human hands, was unfortunately not given the same treatment, at least not at time of recording, but works just fine on modern systems without much tweaking anyway if you have a copy. I suggest the Community Edition, which also comes with a patch to let you play online via a new master server, though you will need a valid CD key, which I'm sure you all have. As for Unreal Tournament 3, you can find that in the garbage where it belongs.
This field uses Mark II respawners, powered by field lattice generators, or flags for short.
Really though, UT3 might be harder to pin down. It was on Steam for more of its life than not, and never really had the fanbase the other games did. I imagine it's out there somewhere if you want to go digging. Look up the OpenSpy patch to get it back online. The UT4 Alpha was also taken off Epic's platform, but you can find a community-run home for it via UT Forever. Fair warning, it is very unfinished. There's a healthy enough map-making scene, though, which I also suggest checking out. All of this will be in the description. So that was Secret Level Unreal Tournament in excruciating detail. Hope you had fun, thanks for coming along, and see you later.